Man, I love basketball. In my adult life, I probably averaged 3 to 4 days a week of basketball. And it's been worth every broken bone, every rolled ankle, every torn knee, and the surgeries that came after that. I love it. And that love for basketball really started when I was a kid, like most people. And when I was in third grade, I made my first team. I guess you didn't really make teams then, but you just got on a team. And then by the time I got to fifth grade, I tried out for my first traveling team. And I made the team, but it turns out by just a little bit. And the fifth graders at the time all found out about it, and I was like the butt end of the joke as the last person picked. And it was brutal. I was like bound and determined to get better, to not be a joke, but the joke continued the rest of the season when I got to play like 1 minute of each game, like at the very, very end. It's not because I was clutch or anything like that. It was because I was terrible and the coach didn't want to waste any good time on me. And so needless to say, I was very frustrated at the end of that season. I was done playing basketball. So I actually quit basketball and didn't play again until I was probably 19 and just recreationally, obviously, at that point. And I look back at that and I really wish as an adult that plays basketball a lot that I would have stuck with it, because who knows what would have happened or where I could have gone. Maybe the NBA, but most likely not. But still, I would have been a better player as an adult, and I wish I would have stuck with it. And we have a lot of moments like that in our life. We oftentimes are deterred, or we stay away from trying new skills. If it's like wanting to learn how to sing or play an instrument or something like that, oftentimes we'll look around and realize when we first start that we're in way over our heads, and there's so many people that are better at it than we are. So why should I even try? And we do that with sports, we do that with games, we do that with all sorts of things. And at some point in your life, you'll probably look back at some of these and realize it's not really a big deal that I didn't do that. Some of them you'll really wish that you had. And for Christians, it's vital, because there are things that we should be doing that we often don't, because we see barriers to them. We see that there's so many people better at what we want to do than we could ever be. So we just don't even try. And Jesus talks about this exact issue in a parable, a word picture that he tells his followers. And we find this parable in the book of Matthew, chapter 25. He's talking to his followers, and he says some incredible insights about what the kingdom of heaven, what his kingdom is going to look like. And Christians, we should really be in tune to this. What happens is there's this master that goes off on an extended trip, and he's a man of lots of wealth. And he gives his wealth to his servants, to 3 of his servants, to take care of, to do something with while he's gone. And one guy, he says he gives $5,000 to. The next guy he gives $2,000 to, and the last guy he gives $1,000 to, each according to their ability. And so you may look at that and you think, well, that's not fair. He didn't give the same amount to anybody. I don't know that one guy had worked for him longer or if he was just more skilled, but I do know that it wasn't level and it wasn't even, but it was what it was. So the master, after being gone for a long time, comes back to square up with his servants. And the first guy, who he gave $5,000 to, he says, hey, what did you do with what I gave you? And he looks at him, he's like, hey man, I know you're after the best, so I went and I worked my tail off and I doubled your money. Here it is. The master says, hey, nice work. I'm proud of you. Good job. From now on, we're going to do business together. The next guy, the exact same thing happened. Even though he only ended up with $4,000 because he doubled his $2,000 and it's way less than $10,000, the master says the same thing. Hey, nice work. You doubled your money. Good job. From now on, we're going to do business together. I don't care that you didn't make as much as the other guy, but you did something with what I gave you. And the last guy he goes to, who is a lot like me, he had nothing. He figured he was worthless. Everybody else around him was better than him. And he says, hey, listen, man, I know you're after the best, so I actually hid your money in the ground because I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want anything to happen to it. I didn't want to waste it. I didn't want to fail. So I left it in the ground. And the master comes to him, and his reaction is intense, but it's incredible. It says the master was furious. He says, that's a terrible way to live. It's criminal to live cautiously like that. It says that it actually makes you a criminal in the master's eyes, who's Jesus, in fact, in this story. It's criminal to live cautiously, to do nothing with what he gave you. It's criminal. We're going to end up a criminal in God's eyes, which is scary. And he says this, if you knew I was after the best, why would you do less than the least? The least you could have done is invest the sum of money with the bankers where you could have got a little bit of interest. Why didn't you do something with it? Take the 1,000 and give it to the one who risked the most and get rid of this play it safe, won't go out on a limb, and throw him into utter darkness, which is intense and brutal. But I don't know about you, I don't want to be there. So, how do we not end up a criminal in God's eyes? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Last week we talked about the idea of what does love require of me? And in this time when we're not actually able to physically help a lot of people or physically help the church or this community, you can ask that question, hey, what does love require of me? That's something that God loves to see. It's imitating Christ. It's being like Jesus and loving on the people around you, going out of your comfort zone to help the people around you. And when we start back up, man, when we can physically be in this building again together, there's so many opportunities. You know, there's people on the stage who preach. There's people on the stage who play music. And you may think, hey, I could never be that good, but now's the time to spend your time honing your skills, working on it, getting better at your skills and working towards something. And if you're like, hey, I never want to be on stage, in fact, that idea scares me away from even wanting to do anything you're saying in this video, listen up. There's so many other ways to volunteer, not just in here in the production booth or setting up. There's so many things you can do there, but there's also nonprofits, local nonprofits that are carrying out the same mission that we are here at Branches, that you can volunteer with any number of those organizations. You can reach out to your friends in this hard time and just see how they're doing and just help them in any way you can. And when we are able to meet again, we're going to hit the ground running. There's going to be so many opportunities. And I don't want us to shy away from those. I don't want us to do nothing with what God's given us, because you guys, you are so blessed and you have so much to offer this world for God's kingdom. And the same goes if you're not a Jesus person, you're like, hey, I'm not about God's kingdom. Listen, this same principle applies to you. Don't be criminal with what he's given you or what nature's given you or whatever. Do something with it. Do something for the good of the people around you. Now, I think one of the best things that Jesus did is that he led by example. He didn't ask us to do something that he wasn't willing to do himself. And he actually came from this small town called Nazareth, which is like the butt end of a joke. It actually was at one point in the Bible. People were like, hey, nothing good can come from Nazareth. And Jesus came from there. He came from nothing, from poverty, from people that weren't important or powerful, and he did something with the little that he had. And he asks us to do the same. So, when it comes to what God has given you, remember, it's criminal to live cautiously like that. Use what he's given you for his glory, for his kingdom in your life and the people around you.